I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
I'm not even supposed to be here today! Oh, fuck you!
Come on, you want me to drive? You're supposed to be suicidal. Remember, I'll anybody drive. Drive. Get in the car. Fuck shit, fuck me in the fucking ass. Fuck you, you fucking stupid cunt.
Hey everyone, it's Don G. Corleone here, and I am here with a brand new movie review. And this review is going to be for the newest release of this weekend, Final Destination Bloodlines, the 6th entry of the Final Destination series. And the last Final Destination review, well, unless another film probably does come out after this, because I have a feeling like this is probably going to make a lot of money because of its projections, or it probably did well Thursday previews. So I have a feeling this is going to make quite a bit of money. So they're probably going to do more films because of all the praise this has already gotten. But for now, unless that happens, this is the last review we're doing. And of course, well, I'll get to direct this one in a bit, but what is the plot of Final Destination Bloodlines? Well, Final Destination Bloodlines is a bit of a different kind of little subversion of the typical Final Destination formula. Usually it's this group of strangers that are the leads, and pretty much it connects all, this premonition ends up connecting all of them, and whenever this group of strangers gets off, they die one by one. It's somewhat like that this time, but this time it does something a little different. This time around, at first we start off in the 1960s with a teenage girl having recurring nightmares of a tower collapse in the 60s, and then she discovers these nightmares are a premonition she inherited from her grandmother. The grandmother predicted the collapse of the building and saved a group of people from death, and decades later, the granddaughter starts having visions of her family members dying, and she realizes that there's a sequence and has to fight to prevent death from claiming her family's bloodline. Yeah, so that's a little different for Final Destination this time. So, as for my reaction, someone who isn't really the biggest fan of this series, I mean, I like the first one, I love 3, and I like 5, don't like 2, and I especially hate the shit out of 4. I was still willing to give this movie a watch because this was Tony's last on-screen appearance after he had sadly passed last year. And the trailer did give me some gnarly gore vibes, and there is some gnarly gore in the film. So, last night I went and checked this out on the Thursday night previews. And how was this one? Is it one of the best, or is it one of the worst? I would say it's a mixed bag. There are some good things that can be found, but there are some things that do kind of really sour the film a lot. Like, there is some character writing that does kind of bog it down a little bit. The way the movie ends, I'll get to spoiler alert in the finale part, kind of also ruins the film. And yeah, and I just didn't really buy this being the highest rated of the series. Right there. I mean, I'll take this over 2 and 4, but I didn't think it was the best one, as some were really just making it out to be. And it's kind of a trend for a lot of late horror sequels that get made today. Usually, if they come out, they get considered the best film of the series, and apparently they think are way better than much better sequels in the franchise that they're trying to retcon, even though they're acting exactly like them. So, I'll get to some of this good and bad qualities. So this is more of a mixed movie review. How was this film made? Well, Final Destination 5 was somewhat successful enough for a new installment to enter development and would be described as a reimagining of the franchise, but it never came to fruition until March 2020, around the time COVID was starting, Craig Perry, the series producer, said the film was going to be set in the world of first responders, but then in that October of that year, Jeffrey Wright, the series creator, confirmed it was the sixth main film in the franchise. So, like with most other installments, filming took place in Vancouver, and I actually did recognize some Vancouver locations once again. And of course, after the film was officially shot and advertised, Final Destination Bloodlines was released in the United States just at the time this was recorded on May 16th, 2025. Has gotten overwhelming praise from critics, like higher reviews than any of the other films. Like most of the other films are either negatively received or mixed received, but this is like the first Final Destination film to get a certified fresh on paid critic sites. So there's that. And this actually, I can probably see this making a lot of money in a way, because Final Destination is kind of a popular series, and it's been 14 years since the last one, and the negativity on 4 has long worn off at this rate, because that's been out for years now. And this does some stuff a little bit different. For like the good stuff, like one of the things I liked is that Bloodlines wasn't just about some unlucky strangers cheating fate again, and this time around it was about a family. And with that shift, like the stakes actually did feel a little heavier, and there's some more raw emotions here, because when death does come for the blood in this one, it's not just the fear you feel, it's also the grief, it's also the guilt, it's also the love. That's why the entry does stand out, like for better or for worse. So, like when it comes to the concept, like usually around, it's usually strangers. It's never been family. That's often the focus of these films. Like usually it's either classmates or coworkers or acquaintances on the run from death. This time we're actually watching a whole entire family that do care for each other really fall into the cycle. So that makes a huge difference. That's a refreshing change right here. That was one of the things I liked about the film. I liked they went for a much more different idea. We've done enough with the classes. We've done enough of like the coworkers. We've done that stuff before. Let's now be about a family this time around. Let's be about a family that's actually connected with one another. So it does hit deeper. And it does make us wonder, like, imagine if your family was in this whole bloodline, like, how far would you go to stop this from happening? And credit where it's due, yeah, the film tries something new with the opening accent. Like, this time around, there's no race tracks, there's no highways, there's no coasters, there's no planes, there's no suspension bridges. Surprise, they could have rehashed any of those again, but this time around, they actually don't. Like, this time around, it actually kicks off in a high-rise restaurant right there. And of course, like, well, where the high-rise restaurant was shot, it was actually shot in a space center that doesn't even have a high-rise restaurant, but the lower first half is actually shot at this space center that I'll mention a bit when I'm talking about the opening. And this whole opening premonition was very unexpected, and it does well in providing the fear for acrophobic people who are very afraid of heights. And it's elegant and terrifying at the same time, but, like, there are some that probably were hoping, like, maybe this was going to be about, like, a water-related something or a ship-related something. Like, this isn't any of that. Like, and honestly, I'm glad they didn't go for... there was rumors that they were going to go for a water park-like scenario, but if they had one for a water park scenario, would it have been great? No. That honestly just seems kind of stupid, and that would have given me Piranha Double Dicks vibes, and I'm glad they didn't go that bullshit route, because that just would have been idiotic. Right there, if they did that, then they would have not learned their lessons from 4. That'd probably be even worse than 4. So I'm glad they did something much more realistic, and having a high-rise restaurant. There is a high-rise restaurant in my area called the Revolving Restaurant, but it's not where this is set. Like, it's a different tower. This tower looks too much like the Seattle Space Needle. The lookout tower my area has is not a Space Needle. It's much more of a normal building. The top of it does look like the Seattle Space Needle almost, but there's a lookout, and there's a lower part that's the Revolver Restaurant. In a way, which is like high price, which is literally really fancy and really high price, so I have not been to it because it's way too high price, but yeah, that is what it is. It is definitely not this tower in this, for those wondering where the Vancouver areas in this film are. I'll get to those when I'm talking about the film. So yeah, now when it comes to the gore, like, yeah, This is what some of us are here for, the gore. And yeah, there are some pretty brutal deaths. There is this hospital machine equipment death. There is this garbage truck death. There is like this one glass death that as well. Like, and there's also the opening premonition. Yeah, the deaths in this one, they're actually bloody and they're actually still wild, and they're not as like graphic as they're not as like dark deaths or graphic deaths as like the ones in 1 or 5. I think 5's deaths were a little more graphic. I think 1's deaths were much more. The first film's deaths are still more disturbing, and yeah, and even the first one I think is better than this movie, honestly. But it's still bloody and wild. Like, there is kind of definitely moments where I did cringe, and as great as some of these sequences are, like, they just don't reach the horror of 3 or 5. Because, like, in the gore, you can still tell there's a lot of CGI in the gore, and the deaths do feel animated, not in the good kind of animated. And, like, seriously, like, there is some practical effects stuff I do kind of stick with you, but a lot of times there's also too much CGI in some of the gore. And Bloodlines does trade the realism for spectacle, and in doing so, and it does lose a bit of its bites. But how its movie starts off is fantastic, and it's definitely a great way to start off the film. It's shot amazingly, the effects are very amazing. But what's the peak? And it's definitely the peak of the movie, though. And sadly, the rest of the movie just doesn't really reach the same heights as some may have been, as I was hoping it would with that opening scene. Like, one of the best things about the first one was the tension created before death. Like, think like, Todd's bathroom death, the teacher's death. Like, that was one of the things about the first one I liked. And honestly, here, it just doesn't really feel that way. So, how do we start off the film? Well, we start off in 1968 at first, where this couple named Paul and Iris, they're going to this opening of the Skyview Restaurant Tower, and where the Skyview Restaurant Tower was shot, the Space Center was shot at was a place called H.R. McMillan Space Center. And I have been there lots of times. There was no restaurant above it. No, don't expect a restaurant above it. There is not a restaurant there. That's the only part of it that's shot there is pretty much the outside of it. There is a giant crab outside. And the lower half actually does look like that, but inside of it is a space museum. It's not a tower going up to a restaurant. There is no tower there. It's just the lower half, and it's kind of shaped like a little dome. But yeah, it is the Space Center. It's the H.R. McMillan Space Center. As soon as I saw that, I immediately was surprised and immediately recognized it, because I definitely recognized the crab outside. So they go up, and they're able to fit in a few more people in the elevator. There's this boy that's trying to steal pennies. This guard's like, hey, don't do that. But the boy doesn't listen. And so yeah, once they get to the top, they are able to get in. They kind of sneak in a way. And then after kind of roaming around the area, they go outside. And the boy is once again now throwing pennies down. And say, hey, don't throw in pennies. You'll kill somebody. And the boy's being rude, like, whatever. And just throws the penny down. But yeah, and then of course, there's a dance party where they're singing the song Shout. And the people are going a little crazy. And of course, like, when they're going crazy, like, they're dancing on this glass floor, which actually is a sign for stupidity at times. Like, yeah, like, if you're building a Sky Tower restaurant, why would you put a glass floor for your dance floor? Yeah, that's not gonna last if you're stomping and dancing on it. It's gonna break. So that is one of the stupid parts of that whole place. Like, that'd be a sign, if I saw that thing cracking, that'd be a sign for me to escape the fucking place. I leave. I'm not staying there. If that thing's gonna fall, like, and guess what? The glass floor breaks. The chandelier shark, but it's like the glass floor beneath the guests, and it breaks, and of course, one of the pennies then fell into a gas heater, and the gas heater then leaks and ignites this massive explosion, and the towers collapse and kills everyone, and right there, but Iris does manage to save this boy from her death, but yeah, after that, the movie does kind of fall flat a little bit, and it trades mention for humor, like like right there. When he had the first film's deaths, like the first film's deaths, like when we had the first one, the deaths felt definitely much more realistic. Like the deaths were actually serious, intense. Like some of the sequels do get a little comedic with the deaths. Like Bloodlines does focus too much on making the atmosphere a little lighthearted to the point where sometimes it kind of feels like a horror comedy. Well, the opening scene at Skyview Tower, though, is definitely brutal in the best way. It's definitely the great way to open up the film. I definitely love the opening scene of the movie. It has the perfect classic chain reaction chaos that the franchise does very well in the opening scenes. And I really feel like I was actually about to watch something very unique here. I was about to watch another, and actually one of the best films of the series. But after that part happens, the rest of the film just doesn't really feel like that. It doesn't feel like what I really should have been watching. And of course, and the spark does start to fade there. Like when you dive deep into the whole lead character's family history and 1969 tower collapse, that part was interesting, but it does drag on a little bit longer though. Like the movie is 110 minutes long. Like the other films are like around the 90-minute mark. That's the thing. Like this film kind of felt way too long at times. It really didn't need to be 110 minutes. And it felt like they were trying to stall the runtime and not try to build tension. Now, some of the cast gave it their all, and there's still inventive death scenes in the movie. If you're wondering if there's great death scenes, yep, they're there. But sometimes the quality and the momentum keep dipping. And story-wise, well, there's definitely some different stuff about it. Like it's about a family this time, so that is unique. Right there, but there's also times when it does kind of feel like they're still trying to do the same stories, kind of the previous 5 movies, and put different structure in the. But although they do try to put some different structure in the film, but sometimes at the end it's still the same thing. Right there, in a way. Ugh, sorry about this, guys. Now, I do enjoy the death sequences and Bloodlines, but I've still seen some better deaths in this franchise. There are still some good ones, and some are just okay, but I like the idea of death chasing a family generation this time. And the cast was not bad, and that they were pretty fine, so after our first premonition scene, it doesn't really start off with her seeing the premonition. It actually turns out to be this nightmare that Stephanie Reyes is having, our actual lead character, who's in college. I think she's about to flunk out of college even. She's experiencing these nightmares about Iris's premonition, and so this roommate of hers encourages her to go back home for answers. So she goes back home. She gets greeted by her father and her brother Charlie, our other lead character. And I will admit, I like that these siblings didn't look like they hated one another, and I like that these siblings actually did get along well. That I did like. I did like they actually looked like they actually tolerated one another here. So they go to their Uncle Howard and Brenda, and they're pretty much their 3 other accomplices, Eric and Bobby, who honestly are kind of annoying in a way. Like, honestly, all they really do is kind of like really just fight one another, make some really dumb decisions. And of course, this other one, Julia. And then Stephanie asks Howard about Iris, aka her grandmother. Howard pretty much explains that Iris became reclusive from the family after the whole incident at the tower, and her daughter and Stephanie's mother ended up leaving them as a result. And so Brennan gives Stephanie to let Iris into Howard, and so she goes to Iris's fortified cabin in the woods. And right here, it almost does feel like it's trying to be Halloween 2018 again with this Iris character now at grandmother age. At first, I feel like it was going to try to be that. There are some times it does kind of take elements from Halloween 2018 like that, and of course, part of the finale is set at the cabin, and they burn the cabin down, and it kind of feels reminiscent of that finale. And there's like a throwback to the truck from the second film. So, yeah, like it kind of just does some nostalgia-based throwback elements to Final Destination 2. And so, Stefani visits Iris at this isolated cabin with a bunch of security, and Iris like, hey, there's no visitors around here. You're not welcome here. Go away. But it's me, Stefani. Come on in. All right, come on in. Let's show your phone. And right here, I did recognize this forest I don't know which forest it was, but I think I've been there. I don't know if it was Alouette or somewhere. It kind of looks like one of those forests up north, maybe ish. I don't know. It looked familiar. That forest did look a little familiar. I don't know what it was, but it looked very familiar. I could have sworn I've been there. I could have sworn maybe I was hiking. Maybe I did go hiking there sometimes when I was younger. But it looked somewhat like that. But back to the film. Iris explains to Stefani once she visits that she disrupted Death's plan of warning Paul and the other guests to leave the glass floor before it broke, much like what we see with the other leads in the other films. And but of course, the tower just never collapsed, though. But Seth then began killing the survivors, and their descendants generation after generation were being lives that should have never existed. And well, so yeah, that's also a different thing. Usually, once you warn a few people, only a few do manage to get off. But then the thing still collapses anyway. But that's what I liked here. I like that it didn't end up breaking anyway, despite the fact that people stopped what they were doing. The event actually ended up not happening. So that was also another different, refreshing thing it did. They got off, but Death still killed them because, well, they were all supposed to die that night. And unfortunately, Paul's one of the casualties of the accident, and Iris compiled information about the omens in a book she kept to cheat Death for years. It prolonged the family's lifespan. So, then Iris leaves the cabin to give Stefani the book, but then a chain reaction causes his vein to impel Iris through her mouth, and so Iris is pretty much dead. And it kicks off all the death scenes from there, like, the twist in character backstory definitely welcomes attempts at freshness, but it's just kind of hard to connect with some of these new faces in the first place because they're just not really well written. They're not really too well written. I didn't really care much for the Stefani character. Like, she had good chemistry with her brother, but they just didn't feel that well written. Like, the cousins weren't that well written. The mother wasn't really that well written. And the grandma character, once she's in the film, she just dies after she comes back. So it really just kind of makes the characters hard to really connect with. Because then you're kind of stuck with because you're kind of stuck with the least interesting ones after that. And the deeper development does kind of sometimes drag. And emotional beats and the death scenes just kind of lack emotional impact. Now when it comes to with the performances though, Caitlin Sanawana is definitely decent, though I wouldn't say she's outstanding as a lead character. Breck Bassiner as like the younger version of Iris. I will admit, honestly, I kind of like the younger Iris much better than the older Iris, like Gabrielle Rose, who still does brings a pretty well done weight in her like one scene, but then she's just killed off when she's reintroduced, and then the rest of the film is just about Caitlin Sanawana. Richard Harmon. His character does pretty grow on you pretty well, and he does become kind of an entertaining highlight of the film. And Owen Patrick Hoyner and Taya Brinos, they're not too bad given their limited roles, but Raya was just kind of alright. Did try with the material they were given though, but just alright in the end. And Bloodlines does still have fun with its kills. Like the pace, like there's still some fast enough pacing to prevent the movie from being a little too boring. Well, right there, like, even though the ending does kind of ruin the film a little bit, like, it's not something I would really see, like, reinventing the franchise, but it does really polish some pretty good old Deathstroke formula with a bit of fresh blood, like the series is known for. And I appreciate they tried to do something new here with this new installment. They didn't just try to repeat the first one again. They didn't just try to repeat the second one again. I like they still tried to do a new storyline here and stayed faithful to a recipe of Final Destination. So, after the funeral of Iris, Darlene returns home, but Stephanie's mad at her because Darlene had distanced herself because ever since those two were children. And then, of course, the death scenes kind of kick off during this barbecue where Stefani's reading the book that Iris gave her and learns that someone named JB had found a survivor that defeated death. Then, meanwhile, while the family's having fun out in the backyard, like, they have this little bar, like, That's where you get the piece of glass from the trailer that kind of like breaks off this breaks that one of the glasses breaks and it then falls into one of the drinking glasses, or no, it falls into the ice first, then goes to the drinking glass, and first it seems like Julia's gonna die from this, but it turns out there was actually a bug in her drink, so that doesn't happen because, well, I've seen the trailer, nobody drinks the glass. The glass then falls out of the cup, it goes onto the ground, and one of the family members is using a lawnmower. That's Howard. Howard's using a lawnmower, but he takes a break from that. And they're bouncing on this trampoline. The trampoline's starting to rip. And then, of course, the next family member to die is Howard. While the family's having fun, like Howard steps on the glass that fell out of the cup. And it falls to the path of this lawnmower that shreds his face. So, Howard's death I liked. I liked Howard's death of the death scenes we had in this one. I'd say that was a pretty kind of a piece of glass are definitely a big fear of me, like either stepping on one or seeing one in a cup easily, although anyone would notice it, but it does kind of go into cartoony moments with the lawnmower, but that was a pretty gnarly coolie death. But then of course that night after that funeral happens and then our chain reaction then causes Eric's tattoo shop to catch fire, but surprisingly though, because he's wearing leather clothing, he ends up surviving. So the trailer makes it look like that's going to be his death scene, but that doesn't end up being his death scene. Of course, Julia then dies, getting pretty much crushed by this garbage truck. That she falls to this garbage can, and then the garbage truck picks her up and dumps her in there. And of course, the truck driver's an idiot because he's busy listening to a Kelly Clarkson song and just jamming out in the truck on the job. Like, hello, dude. How about when there's somebody's waving you to stop because the gang wave for him to stop. If somebody's waving for you to stop, how about you stop? And if you hear screaming, how about you check the truck? How about you? Aren't they supposed to be checking the garbages every time or the trucks arrive? They usually check the garbages like they do in my area. That is, they always check the garbage bags for anything that's not supposed to even go in there in the first place. Like, there's supposed to be another person there that's supposed to be taking out the bags of the bins. Right there. That's what they gotta do. Like, yeah, so he ignores it because of his stupidity, and so she's dead. Right there. So, yeah, that was pretty much where the two siblings were convinced that Duff was after the family, and they were warning their cousins. And that's when he had the trash can death. And now the remaining family members realize that Duff's killing them one by one. And so Marty Brenda, though, were spared for not being part of Iris's bloodline. And then, of course, after that, Darlene suggests that they need to go to the hospital where JB works. And they go to the hospital, and they're looking for JB. And it turns out it's William Bloodworth, the late Tony Todd's character, who's playing this character one last time. This is the very last scene Tony Todd filmed before he passed on. And right here, he explains that there's the boy that Iris saved in the opening. It turns out that boy was him. You find out, and of course, it turns out he was a survivor of the tower collapse. And after that, he helped Iris find a way to save themselves from their fates. And of course, and Bloodworth tells him that only new life can defeat death. And he references the events of the second film where Kimberly and Thomas were able to cheat death. Were able to get new life and achieve new life, but nobody else could. And he's saying that he's done giving people advice and he's retiring and enjoying the last bit of life he has left because he has terminal cancer, and now he's waiting for death to come and claim his life. And he gives one last quote to the characters to cherish every bit of life they have, with a smile on his face before he walks back into his office. And I will admit, for the last scene he filmed, I thought that was a very emotionally well-acted moment. I actually did kind of tear up watching this bit, because Tony Todd's sadly gone. He passed away last year, and this was the last scene he filmed. And this was a good way for him to go out. Like, he's showing up for the last time as the mortician from the other films. It was a very emotional, poetic send-off for him, and giving this character an interesting backstory. this was definitely my favorite scene. This was honestly my favorite scene of the film. I did kind of like the scene a little more than the deaths. It was a perfect way to have our last goodbye to William Bloodworth, our last goodbye to Tony Todd, also kind of really our last goodbye to Tony Todd as a whole in general. Right there, it's kind of like with this scene, Tony Todd was actually not just really talking to the characters, he was actually kind of talking to the audience. He cherished every bit of life we have. Instead of a way he was kind of telling us to cherish all the stuff we have in our lives. So I really loved that bit. I thought that was a perfect send-off for this character. I like they didn't kill this character off. I like they didn't do that. I didn't like they didn't do the Dewey stuff for Scream 5 with this character. No, they actually had this guy show up for one more scene, and then he just walked, and then goes back into his office, and it's a perfect send-off for the character. And it's a perfect send-off for both the actor and the character. And may Tony Todd rest in peace. And I'm glad, and it's great he was able to do this one last scene. One last time. Yeah, so like one of the best decisions was really focusing on the single family. So one of the things it does give the story a bit more emotional weight. Like even though it doesn't really feel that too memorable with those characters, but they still do raise the stakes, and the character development wasn't really deep, but I did like the brother and sister characters in a way, even though they weren't too well written. I actually didn't mind them. I will say they weren't too bad. The mother was. I didn't really care much for the mother. I feel like the mother could have been written out of the film, to be honest. And the film does benefit from a solid budget. Like, you still have the creative, gory death scenes, and there's still a bit of touch of dark humor that balances over nicely, and the visual effects, despite some of the CGI found the gore, are pretty well done, and the intense opening sequence that really does make the film worth it. And the direction does honestly deserve some decent enough praise. Like, it's clear the filmmakers were actually familiar with the entries. It wasn't like Final Destination 4, where it was just a bunch of punks thinking they could come together and make their own little 1000 Ways to Die like comedy film and brush all the 3D in it and try to take inspo from a bunch of Kenny McCormick episodes. Then the attention to detail is pretty impressive, and there's definitely some references to like classic deaths or props, or there are some references to Final D2 for those who like Final D2. And of course, though, despite some of the stuff I've liked, we get on with the finale, and this is what really does bog the film down. Where after that good scene with William Bloodworth, Eric and Bobby decide that they're gonna, you know what? Because like Bobby is like allergic to peanuts, we know in the film. They attempt to actually create new life after listening to William's advice. They're like, hey, Bobby, you're gonna go have a snack of peanuts, and you're gonna die for those peanuts so I can revive you. And yeah, so he tries to go salt peanuts. No. Get the peanut butter cup. Get the peanut butter canned chocolate. Oh, good choice. And then it gets stuck, and at first it seems like they're going to die from the vending machine death, but there's a nice little subversion expectation, so they don't die from that. Then they go into this private room. Instead of going to a room that just has beds, like, how about go to a room where there's only just a bunch of hospital beds, and that's it. Right there. Go to a really completely empty room to do this plan, if you're going to do this. Right there, and right there, so... But the thing is that he's going to have die from his allergic reaction, but Eric is going to revive him. But because they go into an MRI machine room, the plan backfires. And you know the plan's going to backfire because these two are honestly idiots at this idea. They clearly were only listening to the last part of what William was saying. And they said, yeah, you know what? We could do this, make it work. Not if it's not well this thought out you are, because you picked an MRI machine room that you know is going to malfunction. Yeah, it fucking malfunctions, and one of them steals a fucking wheelchair, pretty much, and goes back into the room, but, okay, so Bobby doesn't die right away, yet, but at first I thought, like, Bobby was going to die while alone in that room, but Eric does come back, though. But that's where their deaths happen. And of course, like, just as it seems like it's going well, the MRI machine, it rips out Eric's body piercings, and I will admit, now, at first it seemed like a cool death, but then it also gets cartoony, like when his dick is almost getting, like his dick is stretching out. Like that was a really dumb shot. That almost ruins the death scene as well. Eric is then pretty much crushed against the machine, and the vending machine that they pretty much broke for this stupid dumbass plan to work goes into Bobby's head, and so Bobby is dead. Just as he ejects himself with the EpiPen. And then of course, yeah, so they're out of the, so those dumbasses are out of the picture. I didn't really care for them I didn't really care much for. They were honestly kind of annoying. Like all they did was really fight over looking for a turtle or and stuff, or make some of the dumbest decisions like this. So the three are left are Stephanie, Charlie, and Darlene. They go back to Iris's cabin in their RV, but then the RV crashes and Stephanie's seatbelt jams. Then, of course, there's times that this bit kind of comes way too reminiscent of Halloween 2018 with the cabin exploding. Like, that's pretty much the finale of Halloween 2018 where Laurie set the cabin on fire and trapped Michael Myers in it. It almost feels reminiscent. It kind of does get a little reminiscent of that finale where it's like that again, but the cabin explodes and the chain reaction ignites this fire. As Stephanie started to drown, but Darlene saves Charlie, tells him to go save his sister, and then a lamppost falls and bisects her. So she's out of the picture. Charlie is able to break the seatbelt to free Stephanie and does perform CPR to revive her. But the film does fade to black for a little bit at first, but then it cuts to her like waking up. And well, for a while, this disrupts Death's plan and saves both of them. And you know, I wish the film would have just ended here. They could have just ended the movie here. Then I would have liked this better. You know, like this, if they just ended the movie here, this would have also been refreshing for once. This actually would have been something new. If they had just let the movie end here with these two actually for once winning. Like for once let a lead actually survive this movie. Most of the time, because most of the films, they either end ambiguous or they just end on pretty much downer notes. Final D5, I could live with because at least that actually had a good twist and that was a prequel film. So it was a good way to end that series at the time with us finally seeing the Flight 180 crash. Here, though, it almost repeats the Prom of 4 being a fuck you ending. Where it gets, and I'm going to get into rant quality here. It's 1 week later. It's Charlie's graduation ceremony. And once they're at the graduation ceremony, this old lady that had the blood penny, it falls down when she's trying to get a cookie from this little girl. It goes right to a train track. It gets stuck on the train track when it tries to turn. And the siblings realize that a person is only considered dead from drowning after 5 minutes. And apparently it turns out Charlie revived his sister within a fucking minute. And it turns out the stranger said, you were just unconscious. That you were only unconscious for a minute, and then Charlie revived you in a minute. Just as they realized the implication, this train goes boo in the neighborhood, and then several logs. It's a reference to they literally have to throw back nostalgia to the second film that the train was carrying. At first, the train, like, they managed to outrun the train at first, but then, to basically piss you off, several logs then fall to Stephanie and Charlie, and both of them are fucking dead. Ugh. Yeah, guess what? So basically, in the end, nobody achieved a damn fucking thing. And pretty much Stephanie cheated Death again and pissed Death off. So both her and Charlie suffered for it. And now you just make congratulations. Thanks for making the movie pointless. Big yeah. Guys, this ending is one of the reasons, is one of my problems with the film. And sorry for spoilers, but Why can't you just for once just have one of these fucking films end smoothly for the leads for a change, huh? That would have been refreshing, but no! Let's do the same ending. Let's repeat one of the many worst things about 4. FD3 I would live with because that's ambiguous, and at least you can pretend they survive. Like, some can pretend they die, some can pretend they managed to survive. I like to pretend that Wendy managed to survive and they managed to stop the train from crashing. FD5 I can live with because that was an epic twist and that was a prequel film. This I cannot because this ending makes the fucking movie pointless. The leads didn't learn a fucking thing. And plus, this train thing was just fucking stupid in the first place. This would not fucking happen in real life. That's where it really feels like a fucking Daffy Duck cartoon. Or literally feels like a fucking Squidward torture episode. So, because this is more of a mixed movie review, so I will mention the good and bad for the short. For the good qualities for short, the opening premonition of the tower was epic. Tony Todd's last scene was a very emotional send-off for the character and for the actor as a whole. And I did like they focused on the family for a change. And I liked the MRI machine death. I liked the premonition in the beginning. And I did somewhat like the lawnmower death. The bad for shorts, the CGI and the gore, some characterization with the cousins. The mother character, I was not a really big fan of. I don't think she really did much for the film. And pretty much the ending was basically pretty much a middle finger to the viewer. In a way. You could have for once just had one happy ending of the movie series. You know, because that actually would have been something refreshing. Actually have 2 leads survive for a change. No. Let's be the same exact ending we've been doing for a while. And then let's end it with shout and the credits. And let's basically make the fucking movie pointless. And basically say the leads didn't learn a fucking thing. Good. Thank you. You had me there until that stupid way you just had to choose to end it. Yeah, I get its Final Destination, but you could have did something new. You didn't need to end it on a stupid-ass note. So yeah, Bloodlines has some good about it, but it does falter a lot from all the bad parts. So in the end, I would honestly just stream Final Destination Bloodlines if you're a Final Destination fan, because it's really just a mixed movie that doesn't have a lot else to offer. Anyways, guys, that's it for my mixed review of Final Destination Bloodlines. And if we're not going Final Destination Bloodlines, here's how I'm going to rank this movie. So overall, if you are a fan of the franchise and want to see how it makes its 14-year return, honestly, I would just stream this one online because it's really not much else new, and it's just more of the same with still some terrific ideas, but it also still does falter a lot from the bad ideas. And if we're not going Final Destination Bloodlines, I'm going to give Final Destination Bloodlines a 6 out of 10. Alright, there we go, guys. That basically wraps up my mixed review for Final Destination Bloodlines. Now, I want to know what you guys thought about Final Destination Bloodlines in the comments down below, whether you actually really love this movie, whether you are also mixed on this movie like I am, or whether you actually hated this movie and found it really overhyped. And until then, guys, that'll be it for this mixed movie review. Thank you all for watching. If you like this and want to see more, don't forget to like and subscribe to Don G. Corleone.